Elizabeth Taylor's death shocked the world. One of Hollywood's greatest stars taken by heart failure after years of battling illnesses, surgeries, and addictions that marked her life. But what really happened in her final days? What secrets surrounded her passing? Turbulent marriages, betrayals, forbidden loves, and scandals that shook even the Vatican. Today, you will discover the hidden side of Liz Taylor. So go ahead and leave your like and subscribe to the channel, because that helps YouTube understand that our content deserves to reach more people and keeps alive the memory of the greatest legends of cinema. If you want to support even more, send a super thanks. And if you can't, just comment what surprised you the most about this story. Stay until the end, because the last revelation will leave you completely speechless. From a very young age, Elizabeth Taylor seemed destined for a life as grand as it was painful. Behind the violet eyes and the glamour of the screen hid a woman marked by a body in constant battle. Her health was always a challenge, almost as if each stage of her life came with a new trial. In her youth, a fall during the filming of a movie left injuries that would haunt her forever, chronic back pain that worsened over years, requiring multiple surgeries and even the use of a wheelchair in her later days. But that was only the beginning. Liz faced an astonishing series of illnesses: pneumonia, dysentery, tumors, skin cancer, lung problems, and even brain surgery to remove a benign tumor. With every hospitalization, she was reborn, as if refusing to let suffering extinguish her light. There were more than 70 hospital stays and over 20 surgeries, an almost unbelievable number even for a Hollywood star. And yet, she always returned to the cameras with the strength and beauty of someone who seemed untouchable. However, the constant pain led her down another dangerous path, that of sedatives and painkillers. Elizabeth began to depend on medication to endure the physical pain and emotional weight of losses, intense loves, and the pressures of stardom. Over time, this dependence mixed with alcohol, creating a cycle that nearly destroyed her life. Still, she had the courage to admit herself into rehab and confront her own addiction, becoming one of the first celebrities to speak openly about substance abuse, something unthinkable at the time. Her fight against drugs and alcohol inspired thousands to seek help and showed that even the greatest icons have vulnerabilities. In the final stage of her life, Liz's heart began to fail. She developed congestive heart failure, a condition that weakens the heart and prevents blood from circulating properly. This illness drained her energy, limited her movements, and forced her to spend long periods hospitalized. Even so, she never lost her sense of humor, her love for life, or the sparkle in her eyes. Elizabeth Taylor lived through every pain with dignity and a courage few could match. Her story is not just about fame or beauty, but about resilience, about a woman who fought against everything: illness, addiction, judgment, and still continued to shine until the very end. It is impossible not to be moved when realizing that behind the diva, there was a warrior, someone who faced the impossible and turned every scar into part of her legend. The death of Elizabeth Taylor was the ending of a life that felt like a movie, intense, dramatic, and impossible to forget. At 79 years old, the heart that had loved, suffered, and endured so much finally stopped beating. But the truth is that the world never truly managed to say goodbye to her. Hospitalized at Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles, surrounded by her children and a silence heavy with emotion, Liz departed with the same elegance and mystery that had marked her entire existence. Many believe she already sensed the end, as if she knew her story would not end there, but would continue to live on in every violet gaze the world would never forget. Even weakened, Elizabeth still carried the glow of a star that refused to fade. Her legacy went far beyond glamour, luxury, and scandals. She turned pain into strength, fragility into a symbol, and humanity into eternity. When announcing her death was made, it was not just an actress saying goodbye, but an entire golden era of Hollywood that seemed to fade away with her. Tributes came from everywhere: film colleagues, artists, fans, and even heads of state highlighted the impact Liz had not only on cinema, but also on culture and human compassion. Her jewels, her beauty, and her loves made headlines, but her true legacy lies in the way she faced life, with intensity, emotion, and a rare courage to be herself even when the whole world judged her. She was never afraid to live, to love, or to make mistakes, and perhaps that is why she is still remembered with such fascination today. The death of Elizabeth Taylor was not the end. It was the beginning of her immortality. Her images remain alive on the screen, her voice echoes, and her gaze continues to hypnotize generations that were not even born when she first shone. Liz Taylor became eternal because she lived in a way that time cannot erase. She transcended cinema, beauty, and fame, becoming a legend made of truth, pain, and passion. And that is what makes her story so irresistible, because deep down we all want to understand how someone can live so much, feel so deeply, and still remain eternal even after death. Elizabeth Taylor did not die. She merely changed stages, and now she shines in a place where the stars never fade. Elizabeth Taylor was not born in Hollywood, but she seemed to have been made for it. Her story began in London in 1932, when the world could not have imagined that the little girl with violet eyes would become one of the greatest icons in cinema. The daughter of American parents living in England, Frances Taylor, an elegant and visionary art dealer, and Sarah Southern, a former stage actress who left the theater to dedicate herself to her family, Elizabeth grew up surrounded by culture, valuable paintings, and a sophisticated environment. From a very young age, her beauty caught everyone's attention, and many said she looked like a living doll, with a hypnotic gaze that no one could ignore. At the age of 3, she began taking ballet lessons, showing a natural talent for artistic expression. But the family's fate would change when the shadow of World War II began to spread over Europe. Her parents, fearing the danger, decided to leave everything behind and move to the United States in search of safety and new opportunities. That was how they arrived in sunny California, without imagining that the place would become the stage of Elizabeth's destiny. There, her father opened an art gallery in Los Angeles, and it quickly became a meeting point for Hollywood's elite. Celebrities, producers, and directors would stroll among paintings and sculptures, and it was in that environment that little Liz began to attract attention. People would say, "That girl should be in the movies." Her mother hesitated to let her enter that world, fearing it was too soon, but Elizabeth's glow was too powerful to be contained. When she auditioned for her first role, everyone was enchanted by her naturalness in front of the camera. It was as if she already knew what to do without needing direction. She had a magnetic presence, an energy that made audiences forget she was just a child. It was at that moment that Hollywood discovered a star in the making. But the road would not be easy. Elizabeth faced pressure, long hours of filming, and enormous expectations for someone her age. Even so, nothing seemed to shake her determination. She was confident, intense, and charming, and behind that angelic face there was already a strong personality capable of facing anything that came her way. That rare combination of innocence and power made her an irresistible promise for the studios. And so, while other girls dreamed of being princesses, Elizabeth Taylor was already becoming a queen, the queen of Hollywood. Her modest origins, the escape from war, her early brilliance, and her unusual beauty were only the beginning of a journey that would transform a little girl from London into an eternal myth. And that is precisely where the legend begins, the story of a girl who, without knowing it, carried in her eyes the destiny of being unforgettable. Elizabeth Taylor's personal life was a true whirlwind, a roller coaster of intense passions, public scandals, and decisions that always seemed to defy the impossible. It was impossible to look at Liz and not feel that there was something about her that went beyond the ordinary. Her beauty, her magnetism, and her way of living everything to the extreme, unafraid of consequences. To marry 8 times would seem madness to many, but for her it was just another chapter in a story where love was as addictive as it was dangerous. Between luxury and emotional storms, she loved with the same intensity with which she suffered. And each separation left deep scars, but also pushed her to start over, like a phoenix that always rose again. She was called a homewrecker, criticized for defying Hollywood's moral codes, but she never apologized for following her heart. She loved powerful, famous, and troubled men, diving into relationships that resembled movies, full of jealousy, passion, and excess. When love didn't consume her, it was illness and addiction that tried to defeat her, but she faced everything with the same intensity she brought to every role she played. Her romance with Richard Burton was the most talked about of all. They fought in public, made up with passionate kisses, and lived under flashes of photographers, as if the entire world was a stage for an endless drama. She said she needed love as much as she needed air, and perhaps that is why she lived so many times so explosively. And amid all that, there was also loneliness, the weight of being a woman desired by everyone but understood by few. Elizabeth lived between the sparkle of diamonds and the emptiness of silent nights, battling physical and emotional pain she rarely showed to the public. Even so, she never stopped shining, never stopped challenging what was said to be appropriate for a woman. She became a symbol of power, sensuality, and independence at a time when that frightened the world. Every scar of hers told a story. Every tear hid a victory. And even when she seemed defeated, she found a way to lift her head and move forward. Her personal life was not made of happy endings, but of courageous new beginnings. And that is precisely what makes Elizabeth Taylor unforgettable. Because she lived as few dared to, without regrets, with her soul exposed and her heart always ready to love again, even knowing she might get hurt once more. And perhaps that is why, to this day, the world still speaks of her, fascinated not only by the legendary actress, but by the woman who dared to live intensely in a time that preferred to see her silent. Elizabeth Taylor's rise to stardom was worthy of a movie script, one of those stories that seem impossible but become reality before the cameras. From a very young age, Liz had something no one could quite explain, a presence that drew every gaze, a mix of elegance, intensity, and mystery that made her shine even before she was aware of the power she carried. Her unique beauty, marked by her legendary violet eyes, was only the beginning. What truly set her apart was the way she played every role, as if she were truly living it. When she began acting as a child, she quickly caught the attention of major studios who saw in her the face that represented the new Hollywood, a symbol of glamour, but also of strength and emotion. Elizabeth was not just another pretty girl in movies. She had a raw, natural energy capable of commanding the screen with a single look. It was this intensity that led her to increasingly challenging roles, revealing an artistic maturity that astonished directors and critics alike. While other actresses of the time were molded by the studios, Liz stood out for her authenticity. She didn't just play characters, she became them. With each new film, her name grew at the box office and in newspaper columns, and Hollywood began to realize it was witnessing something that might only happen once in a generation. The public was captivated not only by her performances, but by the way she lived every story off-screen. Elizabeth Taylor was not just a star. She was a cultural phenomenon, someone who turned everything around her into news, into art, into spectacle. And as she grew older, she left behind the image of a sweet, innocent girl to become a powerful woman, magnetic, desired, and feared all at once. Every role seemed tailor-made for her, as if destiny had placed her there to show the world that talent and beauty could coexist in a truly overwhelming way. That is how Liz Taylor conquered the hearts of audiences, cameras, and the very history of cinema, with a brilliance that never fades, with a gaze that transcends generations, and with a strength that made her not just an actress, but a living myth, a legend who learned early on that being born a star is a gift, but remaining one is an art. Elizabeth Taylor's most remarkable films and awards were a reflection of a career that transcended glamour and became synonymous with pure talent, emotion, and power. From a very young age, Liz showed that she would not be just another pretty face on screen. She had something that few actresses possess: the ability to make the audience feel every tear, every glance, and every silence. Her name began to shine brightly with works that changed the course of cinema, and each role seemed to push her higher on the pedestal of Hollywood's greatest stars. One of her first major triumphs was A Place in the Sun, where she portrayed a high society woman in a forbidden romance, revealing to the world an intense, seductive, and completely committed Elizabeth. Then came Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, alongside Paul Newman, where her performance set the screens on fire and earned her an Oscar nomination. At that moment, she was no longer just an actress. She was a force of nature. In Suddenly, last summer, she plunged into a dense psychological drama, proving that she could move between madness and tragedy with frightening naturalness. But it was with Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf that Liz reached the absolute peak of her career. Transformed, visceral, and without vanity, she stripped away the image of perfect beauty to reveal a devastated and real woman, earning the Academy Award for Best Actress and the definitive respect of critics. Before that, she had already made history by portraying Cleopatra, becoming the first actress ever to receive a salary of $1 million, an unthinkable amount of time, symbolizing the power and influence she wielded in the industry. That film also marked the beginning of her explosive romance with Richard Burton, a relationship that, like her performances, was intense, chaotic, and unforgettable. Throughout her career, Elizabeth received numerous awards, including 2 Oscars, 5 Golden Globes, an honorary BAFTA, and the title of Dame Commander of the British Empire granted by Queen Elizabeth II. Recognitions that celebrated not only her art, but also her resilience, her boldness, and her ability to reinvent herself. Each trophy was a testimony to a woman who lived cinema with her body and soul, who defied conventions, refused to be forgotten, and transformed each role into an immortal piece of history. Elizabeth Taylor didn't just win awards, she eternalized them. Because every time her face appears on screen, the world remembers what it truly means to be a star. The loves and scandals of Elizabeth Taylor were as grand and intense as the roles she played on screen, turning her personal life into a real-life soap opera lived under the world's spotlight. No Hollywood star ever loved and suffered with as much passion as Liz, and each romance seemed written by a screenwriter inspired by excess, drama, and desire. She married 8 times to 7 different men, and each union brought a new story of love, jealousy, lust, and tragedy. Her first marriage, to Conrad Nicky Hilton, heir to the famous hotel empire, lasted only 9 months, surrounded by abuse and disillusionment. Shortly after, she married the British actor Michael Wilding, an older and elegant man with whom she had 2 children, and enjoyed a few years of stability. until distance and Hollywood schedules tore them apart. But it was with producer Mike Todd that Liz found what she called her first great true love, a relationship filled with intensity and glamour, tragically cut short when he died in a plane crash. The pain of that loss drove her into the arms of Eddie Fisher, Todd's best friend and, worse yet, the husband of singer Debbie Reynolds. The scandal was devastating, and the press branded her a homewrecker, turning her name into a synonym for controversy. Yet nothing compared to the storm that came next. Richard Burton. They met during the filming of Cleopatra, and their romance was so explosive that the Vatican condemned them, calling them erotic vagabond lovers. But Liz and Burton ignored the world and lived a tempestuous love. They married twice, fought separated, fell in love again, spent fortunes on jewelry and travels, and became the most passionate and talked about couple in Hollywood history. He gave her the famous 69-carat diamond that became a symbol of both their passion and their madness. After Burton came other loves. Politician John Warner, who dragged her into loneliness and alcoholism, and construction worker Larry Fortensky, whom she married at Michael Jackson's mansion, her dear friend and confidant. Liz lived all her loves as she did her roles, fearlessly, without limits, and with total surrender that consumed her and fascinated the public. Each marriage, each scandal, each tear, and each jewel told the story of a woman who loved with the same power she radiated on screen. And it was precisely that which made Elizabeth Taylor a legend, a woman who dared to live intensely, defying conventions, judgments, and destiny itself, turning every love into eternity and every scandal into myth. The famous friendships of Elizabeth Taylor were as intense and legendary as her own life, and each of them revealed a different side of the woman behind the myth. Liz was not just a distant Hollywood star. She was someone with a generous heart, deeply loyal, and capable of forming bonds that went far beyond the glitz of the cameras. Among all her friendships, the most remarkable was undoubtedly with Michael Jackson, an unlikely connection that turned into an almost familial bond. They knew each other deeply, sharing the same feelings of loneliness and a heavy burden of fame. She called him my little angel, and he treated her like a second mother. It was Liz who first called him the king of pop at a public event, and in return, Michael wrote the song Elizabeth I Love You for her, a true declaration of love and gratitude. The two were inseparable. They attended the same events, traveled together, and protected each other during their darkest times. When Michael was accused of abuse, Elizabeth was one of the few celebrities who had the courage to defend him publicly, even testify in his favor. And when he died in 2009, Liz was devastated, attending the funeral heartbroken, saying she had lost a brother. But Michael was not her only great friend. Elizabeth also had strong bonds with artists like Rock Hudson, with whom she shared a sincere and lasting friendship marked by affection and mutual support. When he revealed he had contracted HIV at a time of intense prejudice, Liz was one of the first to support him, launching campaigns and using her influence to raise funds and awareness for the fight against AIDS. It was because of that friendship that she became one of the greatest voices in the battle against the disease, founding organizations that remain active to this day. Another close friend was actor Montgomery Clift, with whom she shared not only films but also moments of vulnerability and healing. She helped him recover after a severe car accident, and he always said Liz had literally saved his life. Alongside people like Andy Warhol, Elton John, and even Princess Diana, Taylor formed a circle of friendships that blended art, glamour, and humanity. Everyone saw in her something rare in Hollywood. Someone genuine, who listened, who cried and laughed without masks, even as one of the most famous women on the planet. Elizabeth Taylor was loved by kings, musicians, artists, and actors, but above all, she was admired as a friend. Someone who turned the simple act of being present into a gesture of love and loyalty. These friendships, filled with emotion, warmth, and intensity, revealed the true essence of Liz, a woman who not only shone on screen but also illuminated the lives of those lucky enough to walk beside her. Elizabeth Taylor's activism and legacy marked an impressive turning point in her life and in Hollywood's history. When many artists prefer to stay away from sensitive causes, Liz threw herself body and soul into the fight against prejudice and indifference. In the 1980s, during an era of fear and misinformation about AIDS, she was one of the first celebrities to use her voice and influence to confront the taboo head-on. The death of her great friend Rock Hudson was a turning point. While the world reacted with prejudice and silence, Elizabeth became outraged and decided to act. She founded AMFAR, the Foundation for AIDS Research, and later the Elizabeth Taylor AIDS Foundation, organizations that remain active to this day, saving lives, funding research, and offering support to those most in need. Liz was not a behind-the-scenes activist. She personally attended events, spoke at conferences, donated fortunes, and pressured governments and business leaders to fund treatments and educational campaigns. Her courage inspired millions and helped change the way the world viewed people living with HIV. And that was only one aspect of her immense legacy. Elizabeth Taylor was also a pioneer in transforming her image into a global brand, launching perfumes that became icons and paving the way for other stars to do the same. But what truly set her apart was her authenticity. She did not do charity for publicity. She did it because she deeply believed she had a mission. Off-screen, she was a woman who valued empathy and solidarity above glamour, someone who used fame as a tool for transformation. When she died in 2011, Liz left an impact that transcends generations, a legacy of courage, humanity, and generosity that lives on in every social project that bears her name and in every person touched by her fight. Elizabeth Taylor proved that true greatness is not only about being admired, but about being remembered for what one does for others. And so, even decades after her passing, her light remains eternal. Not the sparkle of the jewels she loved to wear, but the glow of the soul that turned pain into purpose and fame into compassion. And if you made it this far, you've already realized that Elizabeth Taylor's story goes far beyond the screen. It was a life of glory, pain, love, scandals, and courage. A woman who shone intensely, faced illnesses, defied standards, and left a legacy impossible to erase. So if this documentary helped you discover a new side of this legend, leave your like and subscribe to the channel, because that helps YouTube recommend this content to more people who love great stories like this one. And if you'd like to support the channel even more, use Super Thanks. It's a way to help us keep bringing stories the world has forgotten, but that deserve to be told. And if you can't, leave a comment below telling me what surprised you the most about Liz Taylor's life. I really want to know your opinion. Stay until the end, because the final revelation about her will simply leave you speechless.